We got another one of them. Popping at the mouth or the side of his neck when he pouts. No argument, no rebuttal from. He ain't from my town, I don't know him, so I'm guessing he's a clown.
Welcome to 3-Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. Today we're going to talk about AEW Dynamite Grand Slam. But first, we're also going to talk about Tony Khan. He went on the media scrum. He said some stuff that probably shouldn't have said. We're also going to talk about Sammy Guevara, who apparently is very displeased with AEW's fan base. So I shouldn't have said Tony Khan went on a media scrum. What I should have said, he went on a media tour. That's the most appropriate word. I have a knack for saying the wrong word when I mean something else. So he said several things in different interviews. Of course, one of the things that I posted already was his views on the Northeast. So what happened was he was asked by a local news station in New York about the amount of shows that AEW is doing in the Northeast, to which Tony Khan said that the Northeast is the real crown jewel, not some BS overseas in Saudi Arabia. It's a weird thing that he's got going here. And I noticed that the more successful or the better he thinks AEW is doing, like they had a pretty good rating on TV last week. So now he's full of piss and vinegar. You know, he's got some hubris going and he wants to take shots at WWE again. And I noticed that's really what happens is when he's down and out, it's, oh, I like the product. I wish everything would turn out. I wish we could work together, you know, because AEW is on the downslide. But when AEW is on the upswing, it's, you know, WWE and pot shots here and there. It's really kind of silly and it's very immature. But this is the only way that he knows to sell his show. He tries to sell his show by saying WWE bad, instead of saying because AEW is good. But look, if you want to look at the factual statement, is it true that the Northeast is a great market? I mean, everybody knows that. New York is the media center of the planet. Pretty much every major media outlet is centered somewhere in New York. The Wall Street is in New York. You know, it's the media center of planet Earth. Yes, it's a big market. Yes, it's the real crown jewel. You know, but that would be specifically New York City. For pro wrestling, yes, you know, New York is still pretty big. And the closer you are to New York, the better. You know, so he's not wrong. I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying that the pot shot at Crown Jewel just made no sense. And it made him come across as a guy who's a little too big for his britches. Once again, he's just talking out of his ass to rile up the fan base. And that's really what he does, is he tries to rile up the fan base. Now, he did another talk. It was on a rock station. I noticed that he was doing a lot of the media stuff this week, which is usually the case. Is Tony Khan seemed to do the lion's share of the media. His wrestlers don't do that much. But he was on Rock 105.3. And this is from, I think, Fightful. It says, Khan was asked what he was thinking as Punk was speaking during the media scrum. Tony Khan responded, I can't really comment on any of that. When he was pressed for more and asked what's going on in regards to Punk and having to vacate the AEW World title, which he won at All Out, Khan said, what's going on is it's the best show in pro wrestling tomorrow night on TBS. AEW Dynamite Grand Slam. And then he promoted Moxley versus Danielson. Then he added, since All Out has been very newsworthy shows, and they've all been some of our best shows and best ratings. That's for a reason. AEW has put out some of our best matches. Right now, there's a lot of excitement in the company, not only with all the big championship fights. People are excited about the return of MJF. That's pretty huge. That's one of the main things we're focused on in AEW. When asked about the backstage drama from All Out, took away from MJF's return, Khan said, I'm not going to comment on that, but I will say that MJF's return has been a massive needle mover for AEW. It has generated a ton of interest. Having MJF back on Dynamite has been great. That's another reason why we've been seeing a great ratings bump. He's a great star and a huge part of AEW. In another different media interview, MJF said that he signed for more money, but he did not sign an extension. So he got to cuss out Tony Khan on TV, and then he was paid a huge chunk of money to come back, but would not sign an extension. And it's turned out okay, because this part at least is true. Tony Khan, MJF has been substantial in moving the needle in the proportionate way when it comes to AEW. Far more than the Elite, I could say, which is really good. That's awesome. Maybe even more than CM Punk. So we see that he really doesn't have that much to say on the subject of CM Punk, even though we know that he, from watching the media scrum, which most of us have seen 100 times over, he was nodding in some instances when they were talking about the Elite. He was also blinking a lot. His body language was really, really interesting to follow throughout CM Punk's rant. But I got to give credit to the media in New York for asking the question. Like, what were you thinking at that time? I mean, let's stop and give them a round of applause for having the balls to answer that question. You did a great job, Rock 105 in New York. You did a really good job of asking a tough question. And apparently he didn't really have too much of an answer for you other than just, going on autopilot and promoting his show. All right. So the last piece of media for Tony Khan, he went on Busted Open. And it says Tony Khan was asked what he learned since All Out and dealing with the fallout of Punk's comments and the altercation. He said, "Don't forget that you have great people around you. No matter who you are, there are people around you. Everyone has different situations, family, friends, people at work, people at school. Don't forget there are people who care about you and want you to see you succeed." Then he starts talking about before the Tournament of Champions, a lot of people in the tournament stepped up and said, "I don't care what's happening. I love this place. I love you. I want to make it great. I'm here for whatever you need." To hear those words of reassurance from people like John Moxley, Chris Jericho, and Bryan Danielson means a lot. Having a lot of people return, no matter what you think of them, having people who are away, their returns mean a lot. Samoa Joe, who is one of the biggest stars of all time and is a great presence in the locker room, it's great to have him back. Even MJF, who made a big difference on TV. I don't agree with everything he says, but I do think the wrestling fans love to see MJF on shows, and it makes a big difference for AEW and Dynamite when he's there. It's really been about the fans rallying around AEW and the wrestlers and staff rallying. So basically, he's just basically saying, hey, look, when things got tough, some of the people who actually care about AEW are not just trying to use it for their own personal gain, stepped up, because, none of these guys should care about AEW. And I'm really always surprised to see Chris Jericho involved with this, because Jericho always came across to me like a vulture. Like, he's a guy who's, he's a little bit older. He doesn't really care that much. And basically this is just something he's doing until he waltzes back into the WWE Hall of Fame. But it seems like Jericho actually cares. Whenever some shit's going down, Jericho's literally there trying to fix it, trying to make it better, trying to help. I'm going to give Chris some credit. Let's all take a moment to give Chris Jericho some credit. Same thing with Danielson and Moxley. We heard about the backstage stuff with these guys stepping up and trying to help Samoa Joe, of course, locker room leader, guy who learned his lesson from, being a little bit too big mouthed in TNA. If you don't know what I mean, Google it. But it's an interesting situation because we started seeing messages that morale had improved over time. Because, the Kenny Omega, I wouldn't hire 80% of you. That kind of shit isn't there anymore. The shittiness of the Young Bucks isn't there anymore. CM Punk and his toxic griping, constant complaining, that stuff's not there anymore. The guys who are using the show basically to get attention on themselves, those guys aren't there anymore. Now it's some guys who at least are team players long enough to see that everybody wants to go in the same direction. I've always said that AEW is a place where, they hoard zebra. Where WWE, they breed racehorses. If you're a team player, you can work really well in WWE. You can be 15 years, Hardcore Holly, Bradshaw, whatever. As opposed to other wrestling organizations where usually if you don't get to the top, they cycle you out pretty quickly. AEW is a super indie, essentially, which means they breed essentially zebra, people who come in and they're in for their own personal reasons, and they may stick around for a little while, but ultimately AEW is just a stop before they go somewhere else, and usually that's how they treat Impact as well. And I think a lot of people with the whole, it's like a family, it's kind of a cliche. But I think if you read this comment again, all right, one interesting thing that I noticed is that Tony Khan seems to take this kind of stuff personally. What I mean is he made this comment, having a lot of people return, no matter what you think of them, having people who were away, their returns mean a lot. You know, meaning that there was probably people who weren't there who came back once they heard about all this crap. You know, and we know how Tony Khan responds to people signing AEW contracts. He wants to give them big, Superman hugs, hugs like a small child waiting on daddy to come home from work. One of those kinds of hugs. One of those hugs like a kid sees Santa Claus. One of those kinds of hugs. The way he hugged like Claudio or Okada, it was like short of a kiss on the cheek, like a grandma hug. It was ridiculous. So he seems to be very sensitive to this kind of stuff, and he takes it personally when these guys have come back and rallied around him. And that's a good thing, I think. It speaks badly for his leadership ability, because he should be able to right the ship on his own, at least to a degree. But at least he is appreciative of the talent who is trying to help him out. Now, if only he would listen to them and get other people to listen to them, we might be okay. We might be all right. But I'm not sure. All right, so here's another piece of Tony Khan business. He tweeted out that Grand Slam made $1 million at the gate. They got about, I think, 13,000 people in the building. Last year was 20,000. So it's like, and I think the building actually seats far more. So they didn't sell out the building, but they made $1 million at the gate, which you got to give them credit for, because but they have put a lot of effort into the Grand Slam, and it is treated as a pay-per-view like event with the hype machine. It's in New York, so they're throwing all the marketing money around. They've got Times Square billboards and everything. It's all just jam-packed. Push. This is a big market. It's a big show. And I'll give them some credit for making a regular episode of Dynamite, creating a pay-per-view feel around a regular episode of Dynamite. So, got to give them credit for that. They wanted to create a sort of Clash at the Champions kind of feel. They failed when it came to Battle of the Belts. They failed hard on that. Battle of the Belts sucks. It's stupid. But Grand Slam is the one time where Dynamite actually feels like it's a big deal, where you might miss something if you don't watch it. And they book big matches, so, and they don't necessarily do the best when it comes to storylines. That's just AEW in general. But they didn't fill out that building. They got about maybe 2/3 of the audience that they had last time. What's 2/3 of 20,000? Let's see, 2/3 of 20,000 would be maybe probably just a shade under 2/3. So, but it's an interesting piece of business. And they said the average ticket price was $83. I think that's what WrestleTix said. And Brandon Thurston, he also said that the average ticket price was about $80. So, and then people were inside the building and showed large swaths of empty seats in the tennis stadium. Look, I'm gonna give a guy some credit. He made $1 million, sold half the building. I guess that's good enough. If you can, business is business, man. I said that about, Raws and SmackDowns and stuff like that, where those buildings are damn near naked, but the company makes money on them somehow. And he did a good job, by having an average ticket price of over $80. he was able to get that $1 million gate. Of course, the question is, how much did he actually spend? Especially when you look at, some of the celebrities from the show as we try to transition sort of towards the show. Trina, Fabulous, and Who Kid, and all of these people, all of the celebrities he's going to have make appearances on the show. That gets kind of pricey kind of fast. And then they're not doing anything. They're just kind of standing there, or they're adding their voice. In terms of Fabulous, he didn't do anything. He just kind of walked down the ramp, made some hand signs, then sat down somewhere. DJ Who Kid. I remember they made a big deal about Who Kid being the master of ceremonies or something like that. And then they kind of backed out of it. And then he was just kind of a guy in the crowd. On Twitter, I made jokes because as, a lot of the black AEW fans, they talk a lot about AEW finally starting to accept hip hop. And a lot of that is Swerve's influence on AEW. Because he's a rapper and he knows some rappers. Apparently he's friends with some of these people. Or he has connections with some of these people, which is fine. My whole thing was, it's an interesting situation to look at, because when we talked before about celebrities being brought into AEW, and I would always ask the question, who would know these people, right? That's not just a black demographic thing. But you have to be of a certain age to really appreciate Fabulous, DJ Who Kid, and Trina. In order for you to actually, have any sort of reverence for those people, if you even revere them at all, you would have to be in your mid-30s. Because Trina ain't been hot in over a decade. Who Kid, his heyday was 15 years ago. And you could probably say damn near 20 for Fabulous. All right. Yeah, well, maybe, unless you want to count, the Soul Tape era, which was, mid 2010s, thereabouts. But, so I could be a dick on head and talk about how he's bringing in all these old ass rappers and, who really cares about these old rappers? Who really gives a shit? But at the same time, I do understand what the black wrestling fans who are fans of AEW, I do understand what they mean. For a long time, AEW seemed to be scared of black people. And they kind of went out of their way to not really have too many black wrestlers on the roster. They didn't have a lot of black fans at all. And now it seems like they're at least trying to reach out to black fans. I just wish they would actually reach out to young black fans and not like 40-year-old guys who had crushes on Trina and maybe remember when Fabulous was one of the freestyle masters, during the mixtape era, and people who actually know who DJ Who Kid is. But at the same time, when West Side Gun was out there, what was it, last week or 2 weeks ago, there was a lot of people like, who? Who is that? It's like, they're never going to get like Drake or Beyonce on AEW. Okay, that's just probably not going to happen. You're not going to get Rihanna, on AEW. It's probably not going to happen. But it's a nice attempt, right? I'm going to give them some credit for making it a nice attempt. But it seems like it all comes across, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Forced? Fake? I don't know. But I'm always deeply concerned because a lot of these people, they don't look like they actually know anything about the product. Like, again, I looked at Fabulous entrance during when he walked to the ring with Swerve. He looked like he didn't really want to be there and he didn't do anything. He just kind of went and sat in the crowd and that was it. I don't think he even waved to the people or nothing. And Who Kid was wearing a mask. So, it was just kind of like, whatever. These people were just there. It was just kind of present. But it, again, interesting attempt. Tony Khan, of course, was talking a lot about Grand Slam being something, it was going to be so unique, different from everything that they've ever done before. And that was a lie. This was literally everything AEW does all the time. Returns or debuts, hot shotting, super long matches, work rate matches, you know, digs at WWE. It's literally everything that they do all the time anyway. But let's finally get into Grand Slam. I know there's something else I'm missing. Sammy Guevara. Yeah, Sammy Guevara. So let's talk about Sammy Guevara. So Sammy Guevara, before we really get into Grand Slam, he tweeted out some things. And he tweeted out, I hope you live a life you're proud of. And if you're not, I hope you have the courage to start again. He said, we came up short last night. It is what it is. Thank you to everyone who has helped me get to this point. It's been a hell of a ride. Where we go next, we go with faith. Then he says, thank you to the ones who've paid attention. Things are coming to an end. More tomorrow on the vlog. So people were kind of, interested in what Sammy Guevara had going on here. They were like, what's going on? This sounds like Sammy's not coming back. There was a lot of, at the time when I looked, and I made sure that this was legit because I looked on his Twitter account myself, there was no references to AEW on his Twitter account. And now we know he was on the show tonight because he appeared in the Chris Jericho celebration. We'll get to that in a moment. But he said this on his vlog, and this is from a transcript from Ringside News. He said, maybe I should go away. Maybe this is it for me. I had a nice ride, and maybe I need to go away to get y'all, meaning the fans, to appreciate me. Because that's what you guys do. That's what you did to Cody. While he was in AEW, you hated him. And then he went to WWE, and you guys love him now. So I thought in my mind, man, that maybe this is it for me. I'm not even talking about, going somewhere else. I am just tired. Maybe I just need to take a break in general. So you're talking about this young guy here who is mentally broken. He's very upset that the crowd doesn't like him. And they legitimately don't like him. They're legitimately booing him and trolling him online. And for a guy who's like permanently online, like Sammy Guevara, I can understand how this might, be personal to him. But Sammy Guevara is a human salamander. I'm surprised that he has feelings, and that people hurt them. I want to feel bad for him, but at the same time, I don't. At the same time, I don't. Because a lot of the reason why people don't like him is personal. Because, they're sympathizing with Pam, the girl that they don't know. They have no idea anything about Pam other than, she was a starter girlfriend for Sammy Guevara until he came across the hot Brazilian. And it's like, who wouldn't dump Pam for the hot Brazilian? Come on. And everybody feels sympathy for Pam. That's one thing. But generally speaking, people do hate Sammy Guevara, like legit. Now, I will disagree with him. I think when Cody jump ship to WWE, I think a lot of the AEW fans hated his guts even more because then he was a traitor. I did videos on that. That's when he became Cody the traitor. They were burning his cards and they were burning the shirts. They hated Cody. And maybe his performances won some of them back over, but for the most part, he's an apostate. They can't stand that fucking guy. Sammy Guevara would be no different if he was to jump ship to WWE. It wouldn't be that much different. Everything nice they said about him, they take it back. They've already taken a lot of it back anyway. But I've seen people definitely try to destroy Sammy Guevara. People continuously bringing up the Sasha Banks rape joke. I heard some new audio of Sammy Guevara basically saying like he was going back and forth with this same guy that he was on the radio with. This is I think it's the same conversation where he said he wanted to rape Sasha Banks. And he was doing your mama jokes back and forth with this guy. And he was like, and Sammy Guevara just said like, well, your mom's black. So like, fuck that. Right. And it was kind of like, it was supposed to be a racist joke, like fuck black people or, your mom's black. So ha 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 ha, whatever. I don't think I took it that way, mainly because I understood the context. But also just kind of saying like, so fuck her. Like, okay, he said fuck his mom who was black. But is he saying that, she's being black is derogatory? I don't know. But a lot of people are bringing up a lot of stuff to try to hurt and harm and destroy the career of Sammy Guevara. And really, I like making fun of Sammy Guevara. I will give Sammy Guevara credit. That promo he cut that we all laughed at and we had fun with that. We really did. But the luster of that thing, he's even a loser in so much that he doesn't even have the worst promo in AEW anymore. Marina Shafir came through with the one-piece Luffy, Monkey D. Luffy straw hat and stole the crown from him. So he doesn't even get the prestige of cutting one of the worst promos in AEW history because Marina Shafir came in and did damage. That promo was so unyieldingly cringe that I didn't just get secondhand embarrassment. I got fifth-hand embarrassment. I was so cringed, I pulled my t-shirt over my face. I was just like, oh my God, I need a mask. I needed help. I put my tilted my head the other way. I was like, God damn. I wouldn't even want to be seen in public with Marina Shafir if she couldn't talk. It's like, how do you go to the bank? How do you handle any business with no promo ability whatsoever? How do you function in society when you don't know how to use words? Marina Shafir does not know words. She's not a linguist. She's not an English major. She hasn't taken a Toastmasters class. She's not a stand-up comedian. I don't know what she is. That promo sounds like it was like an alien infested her body with like spores or something and then took over her brain and then talked. That's how bad that promo was. Marina Shafir, that's why I feel bad for Sammy Guevara, because I'm like, man, as much hate and heat we dumped on Sammy Guevara for that really bad promo, and then literally like a week later, Marina Shafir pops up with one of the worst promos in human history. A hellaciously bad promo. I mean, shit, it's bad for the ages. It's that bad. So it's like, this fucking kid can't win. He can't win. We can't even sit around and make fun of him for having a bad promo anymore, because it's like there's people out there with worse promos getting more attention. You know, so it's like the guy, he almost kills Matt Hardy 2 or 3 times. He almost kills himself pretty much every time he goes out there. You know, what more is there for him to do? And I do understand that at this point in his career, even though he's still very young, it seems that Sammy Guevara has topped out. You know, where else is there for him to go? He's going to be multiple time TNT champion. He's already done that. He can't go to the next level. He's not going to the next level. I can understand that frustration that you feel like you've achieved a lot already, and now the glass ceiling is there. But that's Sammy Guevara's fault, because he's so bad at promos that nobody, would believe him if he was in the main event. Nobody would believe Sammy Guevara. He's a human salamander. And if you don't know what I mean by that, Google it. Come on. All right, so can we finally move on to Grand Slam? I know there's some things you guys want to talk about. This episode's going to be long as shit. Jesus Christ, it's going to be long. You know what? Fuck it. We're going in. Match 1 of AEW Grand Slam Dynamite. Chris Jericho defeats Claudio Castagnoli to win the Ring of Honor World title. So earlier in the match, Jericho was hiding behind Kerry Silken and actually pushed Kerry Silken down. Now this was, I wrote down Kerry Silken gets a Stan Lee moment. How Stan Lee gets a cameo in all of the movies, the Marvel movies. Kerry Silken's going to get himself a cameo in Ring of Honor stuff. Jericho, there was a Ricola bomb that happened, and Jericho really didn't kick out as much as the referee just kind of stopped counting. I don't know if anybody else noticed that, but the ref stopped counting before Jericho kicked out, so that was it. That was interesting. Part of the story to this match is Ring of Honor itself. It's about sportsmanship. It's about wrestling, the business, all that kind of stuff. It is the antithesis of what Chris Jericho is and what he represents, being the sports entertainer. And we see this numerous times as Jericho tried to kick Cesaro in the nuts. Cesaro blocked it. He later tried to hit Cesaro with the bat. Cesaro blocked that too. But then it was like the referee got bumped, and he kicked Cesaro in the nuts. Hit him with the Judas effect and pinned him. A huge surprise. Now, this was a huge surprise. I didn't think Jericho would actually win this title. A lot of people seem to believe this was a nod, to we want to get Ring of Honor on TV, and it would be great if we could tell Warner Brothers or whomever that we got Chris Jericho as the world champion of Ring of Honor. I don't know. I look at it like it's just part of the angle. They're doing Blackpool Combat Club versus Jericho Appreciation Society. This is just part of the angle. Jericho wins the belt from a member of the Blackpool Combat Club, would probably drop it to a member of the Blackpool Combat Club. We'll talk about that in a moment. But Jericho beating Claudio, sucks for Claudio. He's again one of those guys who's always a bridesmaid, never the bride. Him being champion was a feel-good moment. But to be quite honest, did it really matter? No. He was a mid-card champion that they called a world champion, So I don't feel too bad for him. At least he got the run. He got the run that everybody thought he should get. I thought about making this sort of the Goldberg Kevin Owens thing where, Jericho didn't need to be world champion at all, but we know that he's world champion because he's eventually going to go drop it to somebody else, Daniel Garcia. But it was all about killing the momentum of Kevin Owens, aka in this instance Claudio Castagnoli. Now, to me, Claudio had not shown any more viability as a top guy. What Vince said about him years ago about there being something missing about him, that's absolutely true. They put him with Paul Heyman. He was able to get over and get to that level. This crowd is predisposed to loving him. So him being over with these people who are the same Ring of Honor fans from 15, 20 years ago, or whatever. It just is what it is on that front. But he hasn't, found a next gear, that makes him a main event star, that main event charisma, that main event intensity. It's just not there. That being said, Chris Jericho winning the Ring of Honor title is absolutely hilarious. To me, when somebody tweeted out Chris Jericho wins a world title for a company that doesn't even exist, and I put as a response again, because remember, he was also WCW champion when WCW didn't exist. So Jericho finds himself again as world champion of a place that does not have television and is basically just a mid-card world champion. Now, of course, as I alluded to a few times already, Jericho winning this title is more of a storyline driven thing rather than popping the crowd or title switching to cause a surprise or anything like that. They're telling the story that Jericho is disappointing Daniel Garcia. Daniel Garcia was the one member of Jericho Appreciation Society that wasn't really all that happy that Jericho won because of the way Jericho won. He kicked the guy in the nuts first. He had been cheating throughout the night, destroying the code of honor, wiping his feet all over it. Ian Riccaboni was great on the call there by talking about, Jericho being the antithesis of what Ring of Honor is all about. And it's going to be tough to have him as world champion. It's kind of similar to what Matt Cardona was the GCW champion or Vince McMahon was the ECW champion. It's in the same vein, and I like it. I think it works. As long as, the storyline gets somebody over, it's not about Jericho. Jericho being the guy, he's basically just going to volunteer to sacrifice himself. Now, in the short term, yeah, he gets another world championship under his belt. But in the long term, he's just world champion to drop it to somebody younger to really kick off Ring of Honor and probably to boost up Ring of Honor buy rates for their pay-per-views. Because I see him being champion probably for a little while. But the question I just have is he going to drop the belt to Daniel Garcia or Wheeler Yuta? At first, I thought, okay, he's clearly going to drop the belt to Wheeler Yuta because that's why they had Yuta lose the pure title. And they're probably going to put the world belt on him by having him beat Jericho. And then that was immediately after the 3 count, and I was still kind of like, oh, okay. And then I saw the whole thing with Daniel Garcia, and I was like, okay, maybe, just maybe, Daniel Garcia gets so upset with Jericho, and Jericho gets upset with Garcia, and they either have a title for title match, or Jericho kicks Daniel Garcia out of the Jericho Appreciation Society, which we know that's coming. That sword, that edge, that angle is coming. He will end up kicking Daniel Garcia out, and it will be a babyface turn for Garcia. He'll go, of course, to Blackpool Combat Club. But the pure belt being on him is a bit of a problem, because it's like, okay, outside of fusing the 2 belts together, what can you really do? But I'm thinking they're going to make Daniel Garcia the Ring of Honor World Champion, and they're probably going to have him win both belts. And I think that's really where we're going with this Jericho winning the title thing, is that he's going to carry it to drop it to one of the young boys. And it's okay with me. I don't see why the young boy couldn't beat Claudio, but, I guess getting some heat on Jericho is fine too. All right, so there was a vignette for Bryan Danielson versus Jon Moxley. It's an actual build to the main event, even though there was only one vignette. In the vignette, Bryan Danielson talked about how he only lost to 4 people in AEW, and then he's gone on to beat all of those men except Jon Moxley. So tonight, it was all going to be about beating the one guy he didn't beat in AEW. That led to the main event. Jon Moxley versus Bryan Danielson. Jon Moxley surprisingly wins again. 3 times AEW World Champion. MJF is watching from the crowd with a poker chip, which is now the Money in the Bank, according to Tony Khan. He can cash it in whenever he wants. I don't really have a problem with that. It makes sense in terms of the casino thing. You cash in your chips whenever you get ready at the casino, right? So he can cash in his chip whenever he gets ready. Okay, fine. I know, some people are going to burn them because they're stealing the Money in the bank. It's like, yeah, but it's one of those things that has been stolen by everybody by now. Pretty much everybody has their version of, you cash this thing in for a world title match. Whether it was Lucha Underground's Gift for the Gods, or it was Option C and Impact with the X Division title, where you could cash it in to get a world title match. There's different caveats on all of them. The Gift of the Gods, you had to give a week notice. The Option C was only at one point in time of the year, which I think was Destination X. Now, AEW is saying basically this is Money in the Bank, that he can cash it in literally whenever he wants to become the world champion. So that's interesting. Moxley winning was a surprise. I think he has become the MVP, the impact player for AEW, but of course my heart would have said, why didn't you give it to Danielson? You should have given it to Danielson. But again, last week they had MJF cut a promo essentially on Moxley. So that basically gave away the finish. There was very little outside of our hopes and dreams. There was very little pushing us towards a Bryan Danielson victory. Once MJF cut that promo on Moxley, we kind of figured that it was going to be Moxley, right? We all should have known that. The match itself was fine. They kicked each other pretty hard. I'll enjoy some of the grappling exchanges they did. The Death Rider on the stage, only leading to a 2 count, was kind of like, all right, they're just going to start burning finishers now. Because Bryan got his finisher kicked out of the Busaiku knee. Also, the label lock, he got to the ropes a couple of times. He even countered it once. And Moxley hit a Death Rider. He kicked out of that. He hit a second one. He actually kicked out of that one too. He ended up winning with a rear naked choke. So this was fine. But the immediacy to which AEW went off the air tells me that they went long. And we didn't get to even see a celebration. It's like they threw the belt on Jon Moxley's stomach. William Regal got in the ring. People were clapping, and then it was over. No confetti, no happiness, nothing. Like, Jon Moxley 3 times the AEW World World Heavyweight Champion. I'll see you next week. I'm like, what? Okay. Sure. Sure, whatever. Moxley being champion, of course, he's just champion to drop it to MJF. Fine. You know, they already built the story that it was going to be Moxley and MJF in the future. Okay, okie dokie. AEW Tag Team Championship, Swerve and Keith Lee versus The Acclaimed. The Acclaimed was probably the most over act in wrestling, period. If this crowd in the Chicago crowd are to be taken at face value, The Acclaimed are the most over act in all of wrestling, next to Roman Reigns. They are the most over guys next to Roman Reigns. I mean, the crowd was absolutely liquid fire for The Acclaimed. I've already talked about Fabulous coming out to the ring. The Acclaimed did a couple of good things in this match, but I want to talk about Keith Lee, because early in the match, Keith Lee pulled out a Hurricane Rana, and I just shook my head because I was like, Jesus. And then later, not too long after that, Max Caster countered Keith Lee's toss with an arm drag. So he arm dragged Keith Lee. And I just like, they're doing everything possible to undermine the size of Keith Lee. You know, you're supposed to be trying to accentuate the guy's size. They're doing whatever it takes to undermine it. You know, he's a huge guy doing a Hurricane Rana. It makes no sense. I don't care how athletic it is. I don't care that he actually can do it. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. It was weird. The finish, Swerve hit Keith Lee by accident, which of course continues there. You know, Swerve is a heel, Lee is a babyface. That was the dynamic. It did seem like Keith Lee and Swerve were upset about being there. I know they were kind of upset after the scrum, that people were saying that they should have lost the titles to The Acclaimed and they should have won them in Chicago. It seemed like they're not happy about being short run champions. But when The Acclaimed is over and somebody is this over, you got to go with it. You know, that this was the emotional part of the show where everybody was right here. Everybody was like, yes, The Acclaimed winning, this is what we wanted. And the crowd just went nuts because The Acclaimed won. So it was the right decision. Immediately afterwards, FTR congratulated The Acclaimed and said they've been number one contender since April. Since April. Brother, it is September. How could you be number one contenders for 5 months and not get a title shot? Now, I know that there's some Meltzer thing out there saying that the rankings don't matter that much. Very convenient that the rankings don't matter. Once they start, the rankings push you towards matches you don't want to book. So all of a sudden, we're just going to ignore. I mean, it's one thing to do it once or twice, but for 5 months, you ignored that FTR was the number one tag team? That's insane to me. It's insane to me that they were okay with that. Anyway, the Gun Club confronted them, made some jokes, FTR puns, and say that they are the younger, more talented FTR. All right, so it seems like the Gun Club is probably going to challenge them for their Ring of Honor tag team titles, which are basically the United States tag team belts, because who cares who has them. FTR definitely should have been the world champions. They should have been winner take all. We should have done this by now. It's probably not the right thing to do with The Acclaimed, because The Acclaimed is so hot that I don't think anybody want to see them lose. So if FTR gets talked into, winner take all situation, they're probably going to just sign up to do the job. So they need to, now that, everybody's all separate, just let it be. But I actually like the idea of the Gun Club versus FTR. I think that's a good idea. That would be a good match. The Gun Club could use the practice. They could also use the mentorship of FTR, the experience of these guys. The Gun Club are probably the best part of the firm, and they're legitimate top prospects, good prospects. So I like it. I don't mind it. Wheeler Yuta cut a promo. Oh, heavens to Betsy. Dear God. he didn't get a single word out with, praise Jesus. And then MJF came out there. He did his whole devil worshippers, all that kind of stuff. The crowd are devil worshippers. They worship him. And he's called Wheeler Yuta mid. Later, he said he's a member of the Blackpool Cuckold Club. Which was very funny. He also said that Wheeler Yuta had pet rock personality, which is true because Wheeler Yuta was standing there like a totem pole trying to cut a promo on MJF. He said that MJF is the king of the low-hanging fruit and said that he's a spineless piece of garbage. Then he kind of, alluded to MJF's, fiance, saying that she's going to walk out on him like he walks out on everybody else. Then MJF, made some comments about William Regal, saying that is William Regal going to teach him how to pop pills, which I think is an incredible dig. MJF, that was almost a Metheny Pillman kind of dig, and I'm pretty sure William Regal's gave him the thumbs up with it because he's been very open about it. So it's not like it's a blow that is too low that William Regal would take it personally. So it led to Yuta smacking him, which was the right response. You guys said something like that about your mentor, I would smack him too. So Tony Schiavone trying to get involved. He ends up getting knocked down by MJF, which is probably the first time ever Tony Schiavone has been touched in wrestling, I think. Speaking of which, whatever happened to that Adam Cole Tony Schiavone thing? I was thinking about that right when this happened. I was like, hey, I remember when they was doing that angle where Tony Schiavone was best friends with Britt Baker and Adam Cole was getting jealous and was getting in between them. There was no payoff to that. Oh, whatever. Unless it was and I don't remember it. Feel free to correct me. Anyway, they got into a fight. Morrissey held Yuta so that MJF could, beat him up. And that was kind of it. Nobody in the Blackpool Combat Club, and there were so many of them back there, because we know Moxley is there. We know Danielson is back there. We know Claudio is back there. We know William Regal is back there. And nobody came to help Wheeler Yuta. With friends like these, for Christ's sakes. With friends like these, you get jumped and beat up, and your friends is kind of like, yeah, I'm stretching right now. I got a match later, bruh. So sorry you getting your ass whooped. I'm not interested in a Wheeler Yuta MJF feud. I'm not. Again, Wheeler Yuta has the personality of a goddamn popsicle stick. He sucks. He sucks in the worst way possible. And in the worst way possible, I mean that he's boring, which is the worst way to suck. Marina Shafir sucks, but that promo was not boring. It was exciting as fuck. I want to see what kind of depths she was going to fall into. How worse can this get? She started kicking the turnbuckle. I was like, oh God, yes. Oh God, this is bad. This is bad on a different level. This is God mode. Terrible promo. It's just, you know me. I'm like, oh yes, it's so bad. I was cringing so hard. Ugh. But the cardinal sin of entertainment is you cannot be boring, which is all Wheeler Yuta is a boring. And everybody needs to tell him he's boring. Next, Jade Cargill is back there talking about she's going to fight Diamante on Rampage. I didn't even remember Diamante existed. Apparently, Diamante is going to have a friend that was going to be there. Jade Cargill didn't care who that friend was. Jade Cargill also did her cut the shit thing, but it was censored. Interesting. We found out that her friend is Trina. Diamante's friend is Trina, the rapper Trina. Trina and Jade Cargill have a little bit of a stare down, to which Jade Cargill says, whatever, I'll see you on Friday. And Trina said, you see me right now. And I was like, oh God, what the hell? Good. All right. Diamante versus Jade Cargill is not much CTV. You would think Jade Cargill would be beyond wrestling these kinds of people, and you also have to, what relationship does Diamante have with Trina? I mean, you say they're friends. Like, from where? Where would you hang out with Trina? Where? Miami? I don't know. In any event, Jade Cargill still wrestling the lowest rung of female wrestler in AEW is an absolute shame. But I think she did say when it comes to the top title, she'll do it on her own time. I think that's what she said in this promo. But I particularly liked her friendly flexing competition with Jordan Grace that she's been doing on Twitter. Well, that was pretty fun. As much as I call Jordan Grace like Piglet or some stuff like that, which she does. She looks like a buff Miss Piggy now. There's nothing she can do that's not going to make her look like Miss Piggy, but at least she's buff now. It's like she's buff. And they were doing like pose offs where I think Jade Cargill was talking about her back. So then Jordan Grace posted a picture of her back. And then Jade Cargill said, "What about them abs?" And Jade Cargill got abs. They look like freshly baked muffins. And Jordan Grace, well, she's in great shape, but she didn't got the abdominal area like Jade Cargill. So it was fun. That was more interesting than Pac versus Orange Cassidy for the All-Atlantic title. I didn't care about this. It's hard for me to care about Orange Cassidy. I don't give a shit. He did a diving DDT, which Pac sold very, very well by basically reacting like he got struck by lightning, which was great. And he did it again when he got hit with another DDT shortly thereafter. Pac hit Orange Cassidy in the head with the ring hammer. The referee's vision was obstructed when this occurred. And he pinned him. So Pac wins by cheating. I thought he was a babyface. I don't know. Is he a babyface or is he a heel? I don't know. Sometimes he feels like a nut. Sometimes he don't. Whatever. Who gives a shit, really? The AEW Women's Championship match. Britt Baker, Athena, Serena Deeb, and Toni Storm have a fatal 4-way. Toni Storm pins Britt Baker with a crucifix. I was surprised to see that Britt Baker took the pin. Probably the right decision. They changed Athena's theme song, which sucks because I liked her original theme song. She's also changed her entrance. Now she got like a dinosaur head or something on. I don't get that. She's trying to be Jurassic World or something like that. I don't get it. Serena Deeb with Serena Deeb, which is basically a machine. She has some pretty good spots in here. Athena did the double lift spot where she had one on the back while carrying one, and she threw him over the head. That was a good spot. Of course, like I said, Toni Storm pins Britt Baker. After the match, Britt Baker attacked Toni Storm. Oh yeah, Britt Baker broke her nose in this match too, which seems to happen all the time. I don't know. I don't think has anybody broken their nose as much as Britt Baker. Has anybody been injured in this division as much as Britt Baker? It seems like every other match, Britt Baker is injured because of the wild and woolly nature and the untrained, unrestrained skill set of the women's division, or lack thereof, I should say, lack of skill set of the AEW women's division. Serena Deeb was, of course, very good, but everybody else, sloppy. Britt Baker attacked Toni Storm after the match. Jamie Hayter ran down to the ring. They teased that Jamie Hayter was not going to help Britt, but instead was going to help Toni, only for Jamie Hayter to beat up on Toni. Then she hugged Britt Baker. It was a touching moment, I guess you could say. After that, they jumped Athena. Serena Deeb joined them. They jumped Athena, and Toni Storm beat them both up. This seemed to go on literally forever. Before Saraya made her debut, she took her sweet time just walking to the ring. She didn't run to the ring at all. She just sauntered to the ring. Then by the time she got to the ring was clear. Nobody else was there. She dared the heels to get back in the ring, and of course they didn't. But I was like, okie dokie. Saraya, aka Paige, is now in AEW. She is all elite. Apparently she was medically cleared while she was still in WWE, but WWE just did not want to use her. Of course, they let her contract expire. And I'm not surprised that she's here. I'm not excited that she's here. In fact, when I mentioned that she was leaving, I said she should do exactly this. She should go to AEW, prove that she can still work, because WWE is being very tentative. They're being very skeptical. They don't want anybody getting hurt permanently on their watch. They don't want that. They let Tony Khan take that risk. I know that Paige was inspired by Daniel Bryan and Edge in order to get her career back. I don't think she's 30 yet. She's probably just under 30 or 30 exactly or something like that. So she's far too young to be retired. And she just wanted to do something. So if she's going to be in here and she's going to wrestle, that's going to be very interesting. But it's just a setup, really. If she starts wrestling in AEW, and she can survive without being killed in one of these matches with, some of these broads who have no upper body strength and doesn't work out, because it's clear they don't. They have no strength whatsoever. They drop you on your head in a minute. But if she can survive and she can prove she can take the bumps and everything's okay, then she can just go to WWE at the end of her contract and want more money. She'll still be fairly young at that point in time. She could just use AEW as proof of concept that WWE was wrong and they should have brought her back. Is she a game changer for this division? It's like she's a woman in the women's division. She's probably the highest profile women's wrestler they've brought in a long time, probably ever. Considering her history with women's wrestling, even though we all know that Paige got injured before she really reached as far as she could really go. So this is an opportunity for her. It's a big one too. AEW is a big platform. They're really going to want to get the most out of this. They're really going to want to give her time. I'm pretty sure they're not going to rush her getting into the ring. At least, now look, Tony Khan he might rush to put her in the ring. But I think he should take his time with it. Build a feud, build a storyline, Put her in a tag match first. That's what I would do. That's what WWE did with Bryan Danielson or Daniel Bryan. They put him in a tag match first. That would probably be a better way of gauging whether she can actually do it, and then easing her back into it. Let her do a couple of tag matches and then, a singles match here and there. And as she gets used to taking the bumps and all that kind of stuff, then you let her run on her own. It's a big pickup for them. I'm pretty sure Tony Khan gave her the biggest, warmest hug. He gave her the warmest of hugs. He probably, snuggled into her bosom and everything. It was probably magnificent. She probably ain't never been hugged like that with clothes on, ever. But, this was a big deal. And I kind of figured this was going to happen when Triple H took over and she didn't come back. So I figured this kind of was going to happen. But they also said that, the conversations actually started in the summer. So maybe they came up with a deal shortly before her contract expired. But this is a big pickup for AEW. But as usual, when it comes to AEW and their debuts and everything, what are you going to do with her? You brought her in right at the top. She's now hugging on Toni Storm, who's an interim world champion. And she's hugging on Athena. And they're setting up a 6-woman tag, apparently, which is perfectly fine for Paige, Again, just to ease her back into the match. She looked happy. She looked like she was glad to be there. The crowd was very excited for her. They were happy she was there. I don't think they cared at all about this match, but they were happy she was there. So they gave her the love. That was good, So all's well that ends well. Saraya got a new gig, and hopefully she doesn't get hurt. I saw some people say, well, WWE keeps overprotecting some of these guys, and AEW is like, fuck it, we're bringing them in. Christian was one of those guys. WWE was kind of like, I don't know, man. Of course, Danielson for years talked about WWE kind of coddling him, and he wanted to do other things, and Vince was wanting to limit what he would do and all that stuff. So, it's a good opportunity for her. It's a good opportunity for AEW. Now, how she's going to be in terms of public relations and all that kind of stuff. Does she immediately take over and becomes like the voice of the women's division and all that kind of stuff? I don't think she has that kind of stature. I don't think she has that kind of name value, but she's a good ambassador. And I think she can add something to the division. Just about how do you choose to use her? Are they going to use her like Sting? Which it just seems like they might. where she only works tag matches and 6-man tags and stuff like that. No singles matches. We don't know. But I'm interested in where they go from here. All right, so AEW Grand Slam from top to bottom, it was a solid ass show in terms of matches and crowd reaction and presentation, top notch. Comes across like a pay-per-view on television. It was a fun night. Nothing too incredibly stupid outside of you giving Wheeler Yuta so much time on television. I mean, that thing was literally like Roddy Piper and that crazy Puerto Rican guy from like Cleveland, Ohio. It was like, why? This guy has the personality of a trucker flap. Why are we talking to this guy? Why is MJF arguing with him? It came across again like another MJF versus Brian Pillman situation where, you know, Pillman just came to a gunfight unarmed. That's exactly what happened with Wheeler Yuta. He just popped up like, oh, I didn't know we were supposed to bring our guns to this duel. Like, yeah, I'm sure. Moxley being world champion again. I like Moxley, so I don't mind it, but I love Danielson, so I kind of pissed about that. And it just kind of have to shrug because I couldn't lose either way. I'm a fan of both guys. The Acclaimed winning was absolutely the right decision. Jericho winning was a surprise. Not a fan of him losing the belt to Garcia or Wheeler Yuta, but that just seems to be the plan. The Fatal 4-Way was just kind of like, we got to have a women's match on the show somewhere, so there it is. The skits or anything like that, there really weren't any, which is what I was expecting. I was expecting some really, really fun stuff, but instead, just got a solid good night of wrestling. So, like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.
Old non-aggression. Once that lesson sets in, you'll see a session, but you got an affection for no progression.